article sent in, this one on the 10 best performances in the worst movies. I'll let you know right heading into this, if you're going to make a list called the 10 best, I think you got to dig a little bit deeper than where they went with this one, because this feels like very leaning heavily towards fun performances from popular actors in popcorn movies that aren't very good. That's more of what this list is. If you like these type of videos, consider joining over on Patreon, where that's where my Patreons are the ones that are sending me the ideas and the articles to react to on these, and they are present live as we are going through these. Hi, patrons, as you guys are watching right now, and they're chiming in the chat with their own picks on some of these ones, and we discuss it afterwards. That it doesn't always make it into the cuts that I clip out, but if you like this sort of thing, want to join in on the fun, recommend articles, consider joining over on Patreon. Information is down below. Let's dive into our article. Coming in at number 10, Raul Julia has actual death as M. Bison in Street Fighter. And I'll say this. This is absolutely an example of a performance that is given far more time and attention than it deserves. And when you know the background behind his performance in this movie, it's actually emotionally devastating. So Street Fighter, not a well-regarded film. It is a movie that's not a great adaptation of Street Fighter. And they cast this great actor to play the villain, M. Bison. And he is having the time of his life giving this epic camp performance. But, as Daniel Skinner chimes in, he was dying of cancer while making the film. And he wanted to make a movie that his kids could enjoy and have fun watching. And as he knew he was dying, and when you know that and you watch the film, it adds all these extra layers to it. He's fantastic in a movie. He's so fun in the movie. He has some great lines in it. There's this one for you, it was the defining moment of your life. For me, it was Tuesday. And it's like this simple line that people remember 30 years later. It's the one line people remember from the film. He is great in the film. Best performance in the worst movies. I don't know that this is the direction that I would go, but like for the nature of this article, what they do here, of course, he belongs on the particular list that they are making today. Moving right along, we have Michael Fassbender as Magneto in Dark Phoenix. Like, this to me, I don't find these to be particularly fun choices, because you're talking about an actor playing a character that they were, of course, great in multiple movies, and then one of the sequels isn't very good, but he was still great in it. This is 100% true. And you throw Apocalypse into the mix. Like, I don't like Apocalypse particularly at all, but in the movie Apocalypse is a short film about Magneto trying to have a normal life with the family. That is like one of the best things in all of the X-Men movies. Like, it's top tier X-Men short film in the middle of X-Men Apocalypse. And the reason it's so fantastic is because he's fantastic. All of that is true. Like I said, I don't find this to be a particularly interesting inclusion for the reason of this is something great that was already great before he was in Dark Phoenix. But it is also true that the movie's not very good, but he's great in it. But he's better in other movies in the franchise. So once again, that's the stuff that makes it not all that interesting to be included, because he's better in the other movies in the franchise. He's not given as much that's particularly like fresh and interesting in Dark Phoenix. Today's video is brought to you by Factor. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition for this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes. This year I've been trying to eat a lot better and work out more. Factor makes it so much easier, and it's so much quicker to eat something that tastes great that also fits in my diet. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience you can't beat. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, choose between things like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus or Keto. I either go with Keto or Protein Plus because I'm a high protein, low carb kind of guy. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab and go snacks, and more add-ons. I like their protein smoothies to kick off my day, once again, because I really like protein. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I'll just go with no. Once again, he's better in the other movies. So right there you go. This isn't very interesting. It's the continuation of a franchise. Any of these ones, it's a sequel where their person is still back. Like, well, he was already great. So like, it's not interesting to like, is Harrison Ford great as Indiana Jones? Yeah. But if you're to give the evidence of that point, you wouldn't point to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But beyond that, I think the performance is distinctly weaker in this film. A lot of that is because it is just a weaker film. The material's weaker. It's a cornier film with cheesier elements with the sun and stuff. You better go back to school. It's fun and stuff like that, but it's not like great Indiana Jones. And there's even stuff like lines in it that where he goes, "You're a teacher?" And he goes, "Part-time." And I think the clip that's in the trailer is different from what's in the movie because they never figured out the right way to deliver the line. There's even stuff that I don't even think is great performance stuff. So I think this is a weird inclusion on every single level. Speaking of weird inclusions, Matt Smith in Morbius. No, come on, get out of here. Like, he gives a campy, fun performance. Honestly, I think his performance in the movie is distracting because the rest of the movie isn't like this weird guy dancing and stuff as a vampire. It's not that. So suddenly having Matt Smith have the time of his life and start dancing, sure, it pops and cuts through the marks, but I absolutely disagree with this. Like, this to me hurt the movie. The stuff that they're like adding some fun, adding some lightness into a dark film. Like, that's an example of why the movie doesn't work, because it couldn't pick a tone. So no, totally disagree with this one. Here's a tricky one. Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad is a different movie that has good reviews. And I would actually apply this one to the whole movie. And one of the early reviews I saw was from Mark Ellis, Schmoes Know, and he basically said, I didn't like the movie Suicide Squad, but I liked the Suicide Squad in Suicide Squad. And I agree with that. Like, it wasn't just her that was great in the movie. All of them were great. But is it true that Margot Robbie did a really fun and maybe more importantly, iconic performance? And I think that's the reason she's the one. I mean, of course, it was also one of those performances that solidified her as a movie star that has stuck around. She's not just the girl from Wolf of Wall Street. She became Harley Quinn and, of course, is Barbie and everybody knows her name now. But she shows up in that movie that was not well regarded. People didn't like the movie. But how many people dressed up as her the next Halloween? And it even became a joke. I'm blanking on what the show was. There was some show where people were dressing up for Halloween, and the joke was everybody dressed up as her because she was great. She was iconic. She was memorable. And, she's not the one that came up with the specific costume, but if she hadn't been good, if she wasn't something that just popped and cut through in what everyone was talking about. So I think this is a good example of a movie that people didn't really remember, but what she did in that movie cut through. She did something that actually was memorable, was iconic, that people kept talking about afterwards. This is a weird one. Matthew Lillard, genuinely humor for Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo movie. So back 20 years ago, James Gunn of Troma, Guardians of the Galaxy, and now head of the DCU, wrote a pair of Scooby-Doo movies back 20 years ago where Matthew Lillard was cast as Shaggy, and then he became Shaggy. He was the voice of Shaggy, and they kept him in that role up until they did Scoob. So for 20 years, Matthew Lillard was Shaggy because of his performance in this movie. I think this is like a weird one, because I don't think those movies are that good, but they're also designed to be pretty childish. Like they're not like they're fine for what they are. People talk to me, so like referring to them as a bad movie, it strikes me as odd. And like he's a great Shaggy. I don't know. This just feels like a weird one. Like the movie's not bad enough, and talking about great performance, with bad movies, really bad movies with a great performance. You think great performance, like all the categories of what you mean by great performance. Matthew Lillard is Shaggy. It strikes me as just a weird thing to go with. And that's the thing about this list. Their definition of best performance is like, all of them seem like we're not talking about win an Oscar. We're not talking about, wow, they really went for it. They showed such emotional range and they transformed into this other person. They're talking about like great entertainment value. I mean, even with Harley Quinn, like that's a great Margot Robbie transformation into this comic book character that's iconic and brought it to life. And there is some depth in their performance. It is quite good in that regard. But you're not like talking about, we're still talking about like a comic book fun character that's not designed to be a performance. Matt Smith and Morbius, like this is not like this performance with tons of layers. They're talking about, yeah, he added some levity to a bad movie by dancing around and being kind of campy. That's why this list is weird to me, because it's like, what one made bad movies a little bit more fun or something like that. And you kind of go, once again, like world-class performance. You're not talking about Matthew Lillard in Scooby-Doo. Like, was Matthew Lillard a great Shaggy? Of course he was. That's why he stuck around. That no one complained about him. That was one of the best things about the movie. But best performance, that's a weird way to describe it. Here's another one of like Dev Patel as Zuko in Last Airbender. No, what are we doing here? what do you I guess you like Dev Patel. He's great. Monkey Man last year. That was awesome. No. I don't even have anything to say. Just no. No. Adam Driver tries to sell Kylo Ren's redemption in Rise of Skywalker. Once again, kind of these big franchise ones. They're not the most interesting to me, but this is true. Like the best and most memorable thing about Rise of Skywalker was his performance. And he's given very little both time, and there's not like a bunch of depth to Ben Solo at the end of the film. There's very little there, but it's tough to even like you watch him, and I don't even know exactly what I'm seeing. I as a professional am not able to identify like exactly what was going on here. He looks like a different person. Like the face of Kylo Ren has an energy, and Ben Solo has a totally different energy. And he does a little shrug, and for the first time in all three of these movies, the only time in these three movies, you go, oh, yeah, of course that is Han Solo's son, because he just does a perfect little shrug thing that is so Han Solo. He nails it while being Ben Solo. So I think there's so much here that it's like, yeah, right, yeah. I see exactly what you're talking about here. This isn't this is kind of some of these ones, these comparative ones of like Adam Driver's the legit, real deal, great performer that elevates what he's in, and you kind of go like, that's not what's going on with Zuko. And you go Shaggy, like a very fun, it's a great Shaggy, but it's Shaggy. The depth of Shaggy is very, very thin. And you talk about like Matt Smith doing dancing in Morbius. It's not the same thing as like you see him transform from Kylo Ren to Ben Solo. They look like two different people, though it's the same guy with the same haircut, all because he transforms. It's 100% performance. Tom Hiddleston's Loki in Thor: The Dark World. This, once again, really boring kind of choices for me because it's a guy that was great in two previous things and he's in another movie. I don't think the movie's bad enough to like really to be interesting here because it's just mediocre. Like it's just perfectly mid. It's a slick movie that is nothing memorable about it. And once again, if you're talking about the best performances from Tom Hiddleston as Loki, this is the last one you would bring up. You'd bring up Thor, you would bring up Avengers, you would bring up Ragnarok, you would of course bring up his own TV show, and then you'd be like, but I mean, he wasn't bad in Dark World. So including it in this list is just dull and boring. That's what's confusing about this list to me. Of like, it feels like we're just going through these big franchises and stuff like that for the most part, rather than trying to find memorable bad movies that in the middle of this bad movie, someone poured their heart and their soul into a fantastic performance. Those exist. They're not on this list though. And finally, Anthony Hopkins in Transformers: The Last Knight. What are we doing? What? If you're like making a list of great Anthony Hopkins performances, this would be like number 50 on the list. And he's probably made 60 movies. I don't know how many movies he's made. But like, he's fun. It's like a fun change of pace. And of course he brings gravitas. And they use him for kind of this shock humor or this a cutaway humor where he's giving a big epic speech and then it cuts to the robot being silly. He's funny. He, because of who he is, says everything and it feels like it has so much depth to it. Anytime Anthony Hopkins talks, it's compelling and it's interesting. But there's nothing in Transformers: The Last Knight that you think great performance. This is just a great performer that anything you put him in, he's not gonna do a bad job. But you can pick up any number of movies that, like, he was in a movie called like Bad Company. I think it was with Chris Rock 20 years ago. That, like, the only thing that's memorable about it is this very odd pairing of the two of them or something like that. Like, he's in a bunch of movies that are not very good, but he's good because he's great. He is always great. So no matter what, he's going to be good in a bad movie. So like, this just feels like, hey, remember that legendary Anthony Hopkins was in Transformers: The Last Knight for some reason? But you can just do this with a bunch of these big popcorn films that he showed up for a little bit. Let's do this with Thor: The Dark World as well. Like, hey, he was in there. He did a good job. Right. Of course he did, because he always does a good job. But the performance is not distinctly interesting. That's why this list is so frustrating to me, because it's just a list of, hey, remember this bad movie that this person was kind of fun in it? But there's no, like, let's dive deep and find a truly great performance in a truly bad movie. Like, it's just not that. It's all this good actor elevated this bad thing they were cast in, playing a character that also didn't have depth. Very weird list to me. So confused. I don't know. That's where you see some of these ones. You go like, oh, I wonder what I'm gonna discover in this. And you like, I'm gonna find something really thoughtful. Maybe there's not a thoughtfulness to it, like a depth. Like, I don't feel like I got insight out of this saying that Tom Hiddleston is good as Loki, right? Or Margot Robbie's good as Harley Quinn, right? That's not like discovering something.
Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.